I took the horse out and I turned him too sharp and he slipped, but he rode completely over the top of me. And then I heard a man's voice. You need to open your eyes and start screaming or you're not going to wake up.
This is Touched by Heaven. Everyday encounters with God. Those moments when heaven and earth collide and we see God. We see His hand reaching out to us, attempting to get our attention, inviting us into a closer relationship. Here we share stories of encounter with angels, divine intervention, prophetic dreams, visions, near-death experiences, big and little God incidents. I'm your host, Trapper Jack. Welcome. Glad you're here for episode 197. A most excellent adventure for Jamie. I mean, there's been highs and lows and all over, and we're going to go on a tour, if you will. As you heard, 1,000-pound horse is about to fall on Jamie, but there's a God moment in it. Another Jesus take the wheel moment. There is a most unusual miscarriage, and we're going down by the river. All these things coming up in this episode of Touched by Heaven. And Jamie is out west.
I live in Alsea, Oregon, out in nowhere. Actually, I live in a little place called Lobster Valley.
Oh, yeah, because it's just teeming with lobsters.
Mostly it's just the little crawdads that resemble lobsters.
Well, sure. That's why you would call that Lobster Valley.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, I'm so glad you reached out to me. And how did you find us?
One of my friends got me started on listening to podcasts. You know, on my way to work, I listen to you, and on my way home, I listen, and so it just, I'm catching up. But they're beautiful stories, and it makes me feel like I'm not alone. There's definitely been things in my life that's been clues and little, hey, you know, I'm here, that have kept my faith, and kind of reminded me when I was off path that I needed to know that, you know, he's with me and and wake me up a little bit.
Okay, let's go to those stories. What do you want to tell us first?
I guess my first story was when I was 11 years old. I grew up on a farm, 150-acre farm out here in Alsea, and we always had horses, and at the time, my grandparents had sheep. I had plans to go fishing with these couple of boys. I was kind of a tomboy at the time. The kind of morning where the sun was coming out, but there was still like crystals on the grass, you know, it was still a little dewy out. My mom stopped me and she said, hey, I need you to ride my horse. His name was Dunnett. I need you to take him out and run him around the field because he's kind of got something going on with his gait. And man, I was like, Mom, really? Like I needed to go meet my friends and I wanted to go and fish. And I was just really and she's like, come, just do it, go on. And so I was, you know, irritated. And so I took the horse out and I was bareback and I turned him too sharp and he slipped, but he rode completely over the top of me. What I remember next is darkness. And then I heard a man's voice, and it wasn't a familiar voice. It wasn't something that like my father, grandfather, anybody that I recognized, but just this voice that was very stern and said, you need to open your eyes and start screaming or you're not going to wake up. And so I did what I was told and I opened my eyes and started screaming and I could see the grass. And the next thing I know, like there's an ambulance and I'm being put in the back of an ambulance and strapped to a board. And then I remember being carried into the hospital on the board, and they had me on the board for a long time where they were doing x-rays, and my dad arrived, and I'd never seen my dad cry up until that point. He dropped to his knees and was just in tears, and I was like, I'm okay, Dad, I'm okay. And when they finally discharged me, the entire hospital workers there like stood up from whatever they were doing and clapped. And we were kind of like, what's going on? And they told my parents, they're like, when a kid comes in like that, They don't often walk out like that.
So what were your injuries out of that?
Nothing. I had a little soreness in my collarbone area, but nothing broken. I had very little to no bruises. I walked out of there just like I was totally fine. And that's why the whole hospital staff was like clapping and cheering, because they're like, how, when you come in an ambulance like that with that kind of when they hear incoming, a kid's been just rolled over by a horse, they don't expect you to walk out like, let's go get some ice cream.
Yeah.
Yeah,
like you were
is normal.
doing. Ice cream time. Let's get some for the horse. I mean, you could have been paralyzed. You could have been crushed. You could have been so many things, broken bones, so many things, and nothing.
Yep.
Other than a voice that said, you better start yelling, otherwise you're going to fade out here, because you needed that.
Yep. It just was something that was so strange, because your inner voice doesn't tend to be, I wouldn't think that mine would be a male figure of any sort. Like, it was just different.
Yeah.
Like, I'd never heard that voice before. Well,
it sounds like the voice said something to the effect of, start yelling, otherwise everything's going to, well, how did he say it? How did he say it? What did he say?
You're not going to wake up.
Or it's like it was like a revival. Like, this is the way to revive yourself. Otherwise, you're just going to fade away. That's what it sounded like.
It's always been something that I was just like, what happened there? My mom said that when she was standing probably, I would say, almost a football field away from me, watching me ride this horse. And she saw me go down, the horse go over the top of me, and me disappear underneath the horse. I'm an 11-year-old girl and wasn't very big. All she saw was me laying there, not moving, no sound. She was just like, oh my gosh, and like started running down to me. And when she got like, I don't know, halfway there or whatever is when I started screaming. So there was a period of time where I was not responding. But what turned out is the doctors told us that it was amazing. Any more pressure on my chest and I would have been dead. If I'd have been riding with a saddle that day, I wouldn't be here today because of the weight of the horse. And if there had been any more pressure on my chest, say that there was a saddle horn or anything like that, I wouldn't be here.
And a horse, how much did the horse weigh?
Oh, 1,000 pounds or more.
Yeah. And it's rolling over you. I mean, did it roll all the way over you? Was it still laying there?
All the way over me. Like, I slid down and the horse's body went all the way over the top of me.
Yeah. And then got up?
And he got up. Yep. He didn't run away very far. He just kind of stood there like, oh gosh, what happened? Yeah. I guess is what my mom said.
Shook it off and went, boy, she's in bad shape.
And so I guess I kind of attribute that to being a guardian angel or, somebody looking out for me. Maybe that I'm not, necessarily aware of, or maybe it was God. It might have been. I don't know.
Yeah. Ever hear that voice before or after?
No, not that same voice. No.
Ooh, we heard another one though. Did we hear another voice?
No. Yeah. I mean, I've heard other things, like more so like thoughts being put in or feelings, but not this stern voice that said, wake up now, open your eyes, or you're not going to wake up. It was a forceful voice, not mean, but like urgent. Yeah. Like you need to do this now.
And it wasn't your voice.
Nope. It wasn't my voice.
You weren't having a conversation with yourself saying, you better wake up, young lady.
No, I mean, and if I did, man, I was very male sounding and older at that point.
Your whole personality, your Sybil, a different personality popped out of you there. As far as your own upbringing goes, faith in the home, not so much. What was your upbringing?
My dad was actually an altar boy. He grew up Catholic when he was a boy. And then my dad definitely made sure that I knew God. And my grandfather was very, very religious. And so I definitely always had a relationship of some sort with God. But I kind of, I've been kind of trying to draw myself back into, my faith and everything. And so I just kind of fell upon this podcast. I've been listening to it, and I've thought, wow, these stories, they touch home to me. And so I finally decided that I would reach out to you and tell you some of mine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to these little voices, little nudges. What else are those?
So I guess the next time that something like that happened to me was, I was in high school, and I would just gotten my driver's license, and, my mom was telling me, be really careful, don't ever speed through, mud puddles because you'll hydroplane. And I just remember her distinctly telling me that. Well, one night I was at the school late, and I was supposed to be home at a certain time. And so I was rushing home, not really paying attention, but all of a sudden there was water across the road, and I hit it, and my car just started to swerve out of control. And everything slowed down in that moment. And I could see the embankment coming closer to the front side of my driver's side. It was happening very fast, but it slowed down to a point where I was like, oh, this is happening. There's nothing I can do about this. And I remember being like, please, God, help me. And I threw my hands up into the air, to kind of shield my face, because I knew that it was going to impact any second. And all of a sudden in that moment, my steering wheel completely turned, and the car spun the opposite direction and died right in the middle of the road. And I'm sitting there shocked, for one, that I wasn't in the embankment, but two, my heart's pounding. I'm like, what happened? How did this happen? How did I go from going a complete certain direction, and all of a sudden I'm sitting here in the middle of the road? It was just some kind of intervention, or I have the best luck ever. Jesus, take the wheel. If he's, it totally was that, because and I remember just starting the car and creeping home, and I just I don't want to tell my mom this, because she told me not to drive so fast in the hydroplane and all that. But oh my gosh, I can't explain how that happened, because I was going for impact.
Yeah.
I had let go, this is happening. This is going to be bad, and please, God, help me. And immediately was swinging the other way and landed in the middle of the road. And I
would be surprised how many people I have talked to with something similar, where seemingly purposely, or a giant urge to take their hands off the wheel when one would think that I have to do something here to control this. How many people just throw their hands up, kind of like you did, and just go in some kind of strange prayer, take the wheel? I mean, that in slow motion, that's kind of what was going on. I have no say.
Yep. I can't explain how weird it was to be in a motion to where I am seeing myself go, dirt is coming towards me, and I just just let go. I go, this is happening, and then the next minute I was in a completely different position, and my car had died, and I was just it was like somebody just totally just picked it up and turned it in a totally different direction. It was so weird.
Did you ever tell Mom?
So eventually I did.
Eventually. 15 years later. By the way, Mom, let's pause right about here. Then more with Jamie here on Touched by Heaven, Everyday Encounters with God. Quick Patreon shout out to Greg. Thanks, Greg. Greg Munoz helping us out on a monthly basis through patreon.com. And thank you, Patreon. They've been just such a godsend for us as well. These episodes have been a blessing to you and bring you closer to God. in your journey and would like to join the Patreon family, that would be awesome. Come here to episode 197. Just click your way through, or you can go directly to patreon.com and search for Trapper Jack. But thank you so much for listening, finding us, listening, and supporting us through patreon.com. All right, let's get back to Jamie now. Jamie's excellent adventure on Touched by Heaven, everyday encounters with God.
I had my son really young, and then my husband at the time, him and I, we had decided we were ready to have another child, and we were really excited about it. We had just seen the baby, and I was about 13 weeks along. I was at work, and I thought, something's wrong. There is something wrong. I don't feel right. And I called the nurse, and she was like, oh, don't stress. Just, we'll make you an appointment. You can come in. And I was like, I don't think I can wait. I really think that there's something wrong. When I got to the hospital, the baby didn't have a heartbeat anymore. They started talking to me about DNCs and how they were going to have to do all these things. And I was a mess. All I could say was I needed to call my husband. I couldn't make decisions. I couldn't believe I just had seen my baby's heartbeat, like the week before. All these thoughts are going through my head. And then I went out in the hallway, and I ended up, and I called my husband, and he couldn't leave work. And so I felt this like whoosh, and I discharged the baby. And I went in the bathroom, and I was able to see the baby. And then when I kind of gathered myself, I went back into the nurse, and they took it away, and I was just distraught. I had, they took care of me and kind of patched me up, and then I had called my work, and I said, I can't come back to work. This happened, but I was just a mess. My heart was broken, and, I kind of was feeling really down that, my husband couldn't come and get me. And so my receptionist at my work, who's also a really good friend of mine, came and picked me up and took me to her house for a little while. And eventually I was like, I need to go home. And so I'm driving home. And so this is an hour drive. And I'm just crying, and I'm sobbing, and I'm just like, why, what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? And I remember this exact spot in the road, and I think about it when I drive by there. And I literally was like, this is too big for me. I can't handle this. I can't. God, you need to take some of this away from me, because I can't. And within a few minutes, I felt like this entire lift. Sorry.
No, this is so real. How far along were you?
13 weeks.
Wow. I mean, you're holding your child.
Yeah. It was, little in my hand, but I could see, it's you're getting to the point where it's a viable, it's a safe time to be able to tell people and, feel comfortable that you're going to make it through this pregnancy. And I was young, and I had no problems carrying my son, and I just never thought crossed my mind that I would miscarry. People do it, but you just never think it's going to be you.
Right. And what is it, about a third? It's about a third of all pregnancies, a third or a fourth of all pregnancies. So,
yeah.
Okay. So are you still driving when this is going on?
Yeah. I was driving, and I just gave it away. I gave it to God, because I couldn't hold all of that sadness and all of that hurt and everything all at once. It was just crushing me. And I just said, you need to lift me up. You need to take some of this away. And he did. I wasn't all better, of course, but I just felt like, how like you just take a big breath and it just kind of just so much lighter. I just felt like a ton had been lifted off of me. Well, I had a few days of just total, I was on the couch and crying, and, I didn't, poor Nathan, my son, he was just like, it's okay, mama. And I just didn't know how to explain to him at that, he was 7, how to explain to him what was going on. And so my husband and I, he was so sorry that he couldn't, be there for me and everything. And so he's like, let's get out of here. So we went down to California to some family's cabin just for a few days, just to get away from everything. I had this cat at the time that was my heart, and she would always crawl up when I was feeling bad, and she would crawl up and sit on my shoulder and purr in my ear when I would cry and stuff. And so I remember waking up, and I wasn't quite awake. It woke me up. I felt a pressure on my shoulder. I heard purring in my ear enough to wake me up. And I woke up and I had tears streaming down my face. And I looked around and there was no animals. There wasn't nobody in the room with me. And I was just like, what was that? And I talked to my friend later and I was like, was that, my coping mechanism? Or do you think that my cat really came down and to soothe me when I was feeling badly? Or did I, somebody send me a sign to help me feel better?
What'd your friend say?
So she said, I think she came down to comfort you.
I don't think it was the cat's decision. Let's put it that way. I mean, because you had that experience before of your cat, seeming to give you consolation at a time when you needed it, I think that was God giving you that same sense, that same feeling to just kind of remind you again of the love that he has for you. And that your cat, whatever level a cat can love, right?
Right.
Also was giving you. So, I mean, I think that was just a great sign of giving comfort to you in a way that you could truly appreciate as just a human being going through life with people and animals around you and God around us, I think that's it. And God's answers are infinite, aren't they? How long had your cat been gone?
Oh, she'd been gone a year or more.
Okay. I mean, if you were to say, okay, what would you like right now at this moment of grief? You probably, well, I'd like to bring my cat back and have the cat, it's not in our thinking, but in God's thinking, he knows exactly what would make you feel a little better, just a little better.
Yeah. Yeah. And, there's just been things like that. I've had kind of, a rocky up and down here and there. And I've been to church and walked away from church. And, I found my way back to church in certain times when I walk in there and it's like they're talking to me. They're telling me exactly what I needed to hear in that moment. And it's just how he speaks to you. You just have to listen and be in the right place to listen. And it's funny because I was thinking about it as I was listening last night, that I talk to God like he's my best friend. Like I just, on my way to work, on, anywhere that I'm around, it's not always necessarily prayer form, but just kind of what's going on in my life and my prayers for people. And I at the same church I went to, I got baptized 5 years ago. And so I'd been going to this church and since I started being like, wow, this is like it's speaking to my soul. And, so I started bringing my kids and my family. We walked down to the river, because there was another, young boy who was getting baptized. And I remember standing there and we were all watching and supporting, and I had my kids and I was in, Sunday dress. I was dressed up and
you're down by the river?
And I'm down by the river.
All right.
And suddenly, Pastor Mike goes, "Is there anyone else out there that feels God and wants to be baptized today?" I just started throwing things at my kids, like my phone and my purse, and Nathan's like, "What are you doing, Mom? What are you doing?" And I was like, I'm like, I'm doing this, and I just felt this overwhelming, like, I need to do this, and here I go, all dressed in my nice clothing and everything, out into the water, and and I got baptized, and I remember coming up, and I couldn't even speak when I came out of the water because I just felt all this rush of just emotions and high and all of the things. I just couldn't even imagine how that was. My husband's like, "That was God right there telling you, it's time. You need to do this."
This is my beloved daughter right here, right here. How many people were down there watching?
Oh, there was quite a crowd of people, but it was just hilarious because I was just, my kids were just like, "What are you doing?"
This is not what you got dressed for that day.
And so, but yeah, it was a really cool thing, and I, like I said, it's followed me through my life. There's been tugs and pulls and hints and things that are like, "Hey, I'm here. Believe me, love me. I'm here. I love you, and I'm here for you." So I just felt like I needed to share that with others, because the stories that you share with us, with your followers, like, it touches me, and it really resonates to me. And it's like, wow, other people have these things too. Like, other people are having these experiences, and it's just like someone on your one of the podcasts I just listened to was like, "These are my people," and that's exactly how I felt.
My people. These are my people listening. Darn right they are. Darn right. And they're smiling right now at the thought of you going into the river. I think that is so cool. There's just a wonderful spirit about you, Jamie. There really is. And not everybody. When you take a look at your life, there are people who could have had and have had those very same experiences and never made the connection. I had a horse roll over me, or put a Jeep, whatever it was, and I survived, and they walk away without realizing the intervention. Invasion of grace. I love that. Invasion of grace. In other words, here's, heaven and earth colliding in this invasion of grace that protected you from what that horse should have done to you, or that embankment that was coming, and, take the wheel, Jesus, and he did. Or I am so touched by when you miscarried, and that experience, which had to be devastating and at the same time filled with grace. Not many people in a miscarriage get to see their child. Do you wish you hadn't seen, or is there?
No, I think that I am glad that I got, in some way to hold it in my hand, and my aunt called me while I was still at home and was talking to me, and she just said, matter of factly, she says, "Your grandma's up in heaven right now holding that baby, and one of these days you're going to get to see it again."
Absolutely. Oh, you just nailed it. You just nailed it. There is a resurrection, and there is a heaven.
Yep.
And there is all of that. And then to cap it all off with a baptism where you're throwing the phone. Mom. Yeah. Had earrings on that day too, didn't you?
I was full on dressed up, and I'm just stomping out in the water, and I think I was I was on a mission, whatever was coming to me and made me feel, I just had this surge, and I was on a mission, and I didn't really care what was going on, I was going out there and I was doing this. and man, it was a great experience, and I definitely feel like with everything that I had gone on in my life up until then, like, it needed to happen, and God knew it, and he told me.
You know what you broke through at that moment, and this has been on my mind for the last week or two, you broke through the fear. You broke through fear of what will people say, what will my family say, what will those people say. I got all dressed up, and you went with that beautiful spirit connection with God, who so much wanted you to head for the water, and you aligned yourself with that breakthrough of allowing God to do what God wanted to do with you, and it changed you in whatever way that baptism changed you. It changed you. Sin died in that river. Sin died, and you came back up a new person. Mm-hmm. That is so cool. I love all these stories, Jamie. I do. It's simple and beautiful.
Well, I appreciate it. I was a little nervous. I have to admit, like, I was like, I have to do this, this right. I didn't want to be, super shy about it, but it's been really easy to talk to you and really easy to share. So I appreciate your time and everybody else for listening. I hope that my stories can resonate with somebody too, because that's what it's about. And I think that's honestly like the biggest part here is that if anyone out there has some kind of doubt or in them, and then they hear this, and then maybe they didn't see a sign, and they think, wow, wait, maybe that one time this happened, that could that be it? Just that connection. I hope that something I said today can do that.
I usually ask, what's the takeaway? I think he just gave it to us.
Well, I've listened to you a few times, so I'm ahead of the game, I think.
Thanks, Jamie. I know we all make God smile at times. I hope we make him smile a lot, But Jamie, your spirit, that moment down by the river where it's throwing the kids the phone, the purse, Mom! Yeah, I just love that moment of, nope, I'm feeling the spirit. I'm going in. I got my Sunday best on, and I'm going in. I just love that. She is just so connected and just doesn't care, just goes for it. I think you kind of hear that throughout about this entire episode. Obviously, obeying an angel of scream. You want to live? Scream. Okay. These moments of Jesus take the wheel just keep astounding me. All I can figure is it's just such a strong nudge that you just can't not just say, take the wheel, basically, because that's what she did. It was like just hands in front, hands off the wheel, and all of a sudden she's over there in the middle of the road. I don't know if that's always the right idea, but for some, for many, it's certainly worked out well. As a guy, hearing the miscarriage story, it touched me, because guys can't have that moment, that just really, really touched me. And just the consolation of feeling a cat that isn't there. You know what I mean? That just these moments, these conversations that God is having with Jamie, that God is having with all of us. And I say again, a lot of people could have these same experiences and not hear it, not feel it, not know it, but Jamie does. She sees the flare gun going off, and God saying, "I'm right here." And there have been times she's mentioned where sometimes she feels closer than others. We all do. We all feel sometimes closer than others. But she always comes back. She's always coming back. She's always seeking. And I thank you again for finding the podcast a few months back, and she's catching up on all these episodes. And these episodes fortified her faith, and she wanted to fortify your faith. So cool. So if you have a story, let me know here at touchedbyheaven.net. We appreciate that. If you want to help us out on Patreon, you come here to episode 197 at touchedbyheaven.net. The CDs and downloads, Did You Hear What God Just Said? About hearing God's voice is here, as well as Mary, His Messenger. And by the way, if you happen to be here in the Cleveland, Ohio area during the Lenten season of 2022, I'm giving a talk at a number of churches called Mary at the Foot of the Cross. It's interesting because we're looking through the eyes of Mary, and Jesus during the talk is still alive on the cross. So a little different perspective. You can check that out here also at touchedbyheaven.net, episode 197. All right. I will see you next week. Okay. I'm Trapper Jack, and I just want to remind you, I know I hear this all the time, that a lot of people, if you made it this far, you didn't fall asleep. I know a lot of people, they tell me to listen at night and they fall asleep. And so I'm going to give you one little bit of advice to help you not fall asleep while you listen to the podcast.
You need to open your eyes and start screaming